In our previous lectures, we identified characteristics of living things, that is to say, we identified difference between living and non-living things. In this lecture, we will learn what mechanisms keep living things to stay living. In order to function properly, cells need to have appropriate conditions such as proper temperature, pH, appropriate concentration of diverse chemicals. These conditions may, however, change in the environment from one moment to the next. So what allows organisms to maintain internal condition within a narrow range despite environmental changes? We will answer this question soon enough, but before, I would like to introduce you to my medical records. Recently, I had an annual physical examination and received results via my chart on internet from the hospital. Here you see results of a measurement of concentration of a chemical called bilirubin. Elevated levels of bilirubin may indicate liver damage or disease. Higher than normal levels of bilirubin in blood may indicate that liver is not clearing bilirubin properly. It is also may indicate other problems in the body. So looking at the results, do I have to worry concerning my bilirubin levels? As you can see, the standard range of the bilirubin should be lower than 0.4 milligram per deciliter. So the levels of bilirubin are normal. The reason why doctors take tests on bilirubin level in blood is to investigate jaundice, a yellowing of the skin that might be caused by elevated levels of bilirubin. Perhaps my doctor forgot that yellow skin is my natural skin color, not a symptom. In fact, all my life, when doctors see me, the first questions they ask, do you have a hepatitis? I never had one, but because the color of my skin, it is throwing doctors off. Now there was test done on uric acid. It is because my father had struggled with the condition called gout, a common form of inflammatory arthritis that is very painful, and the doctors wanted to investigate either I might have the same problem. As you can see, the levels of uric acid is not elevated and in the normal range. So I do not have to worry about this problem. My body manages this on its own. Aha, how about hemoglobin A1C level? The chart is self-explanatory. Should I be worried about becoming pre-diabetic? Well, what keeps me from being pre-diabetic is 0.1%. So perhaps I should be a bit alert about this value, but it is not that bad. Let's hope that my body will manage the right levels of hemoglobin A1C on its own. What I should be concerned with is the level of cholesterol and triglycerides, as apparent from this chart. The high triglyceride levels combined with either high LDL cholesterol or low HDL cholesterol can result in fatty buildup in the arteries. This condition increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. The reason why I started this lecture with my medical record is to demonstrate you that humans or any other organisms have to keep the constant environment in their body and cells. Every organism has a range of certain chemicals that is normal for their particular type, and this range should be constant. If the concentration of the particular chemical substance is getting significantly higher or lower, this can lead to a disease or even death of an organism. Besides chemical composition, this is also true of amount of water and temperature. The observation that any other organism has to keep the constant environment in their body and cells was first made and described by a French physiologist, Claude Bernard. Homeostasis is ability of an organism to keep constant environment within its body or cell, because some organisms are unicellular, that is to say, made of one cell. The term homeostasis was coined by Walter Bradford Cannon in an attempt to extend and codify the principle of a constant interior body environment that had been postulated by Claude Bernard. Homeostasis is a tendency of a system, especially the physiological system of higher animals, to maintain internal stability owing to the coordinated response of its parts to any situation or stimulus tending to disturb its normal condition or function. In other words, homeostasis is the maintenance of variable around an ideal normal value or set point. The value of the variable fluctuates around the point to establish a normal range of values. The average human body temperature is 98.6, but normal body temperature can range between 97 Fahrenheit and 99 Fahrenheit or more. Your body temperature can vary depending on how active you are or time of the day. Generally, older people have lower body temperatures than younger people have. A cold-blooded animal, like fish, maintains a lower body temperature according to the external environment, whereas a warm-blooded animal, like a human, a penguin, a bear, or a whale, preserves higher body temperature to maintain internal stability. Thermoregulation is the process of regulating body temperature, which is a major part of homeostasis. There are two ways to regulate body temperature. One way is to regulate temperature within its body on its own, and there is another way is to rely on external environment to regulate body temperature, both to stay warm and to avoid becoming overheated. That's there is two different types of organisms: endothermic organisms and ectothermic organisms. To be endothermic, an organism must produce its own body heat through metabolism. This means that the endothermic organism can maintain internal homeostasis regardless of the external environmental temperature. In most instances, the size and shape of an organism dictate whether it will be warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Think about some large animals, elephants, whales, and walruses. Their volume is so large that relying on the outside environment to heat them up would be insufficient and would slow their responses time, putting their survival at risk. For that reason, nearly all large animals are warm-blooded. Small warm-blooded animals tend to have a round shape, which ensures that the interior of an organism stays warm the longest time possible. To regulate the temperature of its body, an ectotherm, reptile, amphibian, fish, invertebrate, relies primarily on its external environment, such as sunlight or heated rock surface, to regulate the temperature of its body. Cold-blooded animals do not maintain a constant body temperature. They get their heat from the outside environment, so their body temperatures fluctuates based on external temperatures. If it is 50 Fahrenheit outside, their body temperature will eventually drop to 50 Fahrenheit as well. If it rises to 100 Fahrenheit, their body temperature will reach 100 Fahrenheit. Most of the rest of the animal kingdom, except birds and mammals, are cold-blooded. Most cold-blooded organisms have either an elongated or flat shape. If you look at the typical fish, their bodies tend to be flat when viewed head-on from the front. Snakes, lizards, and worms tend to be long and slender. This shape ensures they can heat up and cool down rapidly. This is an example of animal adaptation to their environment. Cat's temperature ranges from 100 to 103 Fahrenheit. Aha! For humans, 100 Fahrenheit is considered to be low-grade fever. But for cats, this is a totally normal temperature. About 8 years ago in the summer, I felt a bit weak and feverish. I measured my temperature and it was 100 Fahrenheit. 100 one day, 100 another day, and this went for 3 months. I said, wait a minute, my temperature is never 100. This is not normal. There should be something wrong. And I went to a doctor. I told him about my concern. Doctor ran a basic blood work, but basic blood work usually do not show much. So looking at the basic blood work result, doctor simply shrugged his shoulders. What would he say? No major problems. You see, in order to identify a problem, one needs to run a specific test. Your blood is never tested for every possible cases. And just from the low-grade temperature, it is difficult to choose what other tests could be done. I told him, test me for West Nile virus. He looked at me with a suspicion, as if I am out of my mind, but he ran the test. And he came very surprised. Turned out I had been positive on West Nile fever, a viral disease that is spread by the bite of mosquito infected with the virus. Mosquitoes become infected when they feed on infected birds. I know that I got it in New York because those days I never left New York for at least 3 years. Those days West Nile virus were considered unusual in the United States. Now CDC listed as the most common pathogen spread by mosquitoes in the continental United States. The most effective way to avoid getting West Nile virus is to prevent mosquito bites. Thus, what I just give you is an example of how immune response influences homeostasis. In the case there was a shift in this case there was a shift in normothermia, normal normal body temperature. Infections usually increase body temperature, as you know. This is one of the protective mechanisms of the body to fight infection. Though if the temperature is too high, you will have to take medication. High temperatures may cause brain damage or even death. Because some of the important enzymes in the body stop working at high temperatures, homeostasis is not longer maintained, and this leads to the death of brain cells. You see, knowing what happens with your body will help you to understand what might go wrong in the future. What to do about it is another question. You can do nothing about West Nile virus. There is no antivirals for it, no treatment, and there are no vaccines to prevent the virus from spreading. Now, question to everyone. Besides of infection that causes disease, what else can cause dangerous shifts or even permanent change in homeostasis? Fluids and electrolytes. That is why when you are having diarrhea, you better make sure that you are hydrated and have enough electrolytes. Because with the diarrhea, you lose not only the body fluids, but electrolytes as well. So you will have to make sure you are taking enough fluids and eat bananas. Bananas are excellent source of electrolytes. Anyone heard of a BRAT diet, which stands for bananas, rice, apples, and toast? A dog's normal body temperature can range from 101 to 102.5 Fahrenheit, which is quite a bit hotter than the average human body temperature. If your pup's temperature rises above 103 Fahrenheit, your dog has a fever. A fully hydrated camel has a diurnal body temperature range of 97 to 100 Fahrenheit. However, When dehydrated and exposed to the high environmental heat load, body temperature may fluctuate from approximately 93 to 107 Fahrenheit. Birds are warm-blooded animals that have a much higher metabolism and thus higher body temperature than humans. While the exact measurement varies for different bird species, the average bird body temperature is 105 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. Snakes and other ectotherms are cold-blooded animals that lack the ability to generate body heat internally. Snakes and frogs are most active during the day, using the sun's rays to warm their bodies as they hunt for food or simply bask in the sunlight. The heat of the sun speeds up the metabolism, giving them energy and helping them to digest their food. They are also hide in shady spots or burrow underground during the hottest part of the day to avoid overheating. Snakes usually spend cold weather months underground in a state of hibernation, during which their metabolism becomes very slow, allowing them to sleep for weeks without food. Now let's take a look at another example of homeostasis, the heart rate. A normal resting heart rate for adult human ranges from 60 to 100 beats per minute. Generally, a lower heart rate at rest implies more efficient heart function and better cardiovascular fitness. For example, a well-trained athlete might have a normal resting heart rate closer to 40 beats per minute. A cat's normal heart rate tends to range from 140 to 220 beats a minute. The more relaxed your cat is, the more likely it will be on the lower range of that scale. If it's stressed or recently active, then it will be on the higher end of the scale or maybe even above that range. For dogs, a normal heartbeat varies on size. Small dogs and puppies normally have heart rate of 120 to 160 beats per minute. Dogs over 30 pounds have heart rate of 60 to 120. The larger the dog, the slower the normal heart rate. The heart rate of camels ranges from 35 to 50 beats per minute. Bats use an unusual heart rate pattern and extremely efficient metabolism to balance energy conservation with the sudden burst of power required for flight. Their heartbeat could be as slow as 20 beats per minute or as high as over 1,000 beats per minute. The heart rate of snakes is influenced by diverse factors such as temperatures, the digestive process, activity pattern, and pregnancy. Frogs heartbeat between 40 to 50 beats per minute at normal rate. Increasing temperatures increases frogs heartbeat. This brief overlook demonstrated the range of heartbeats in different animals. What is normal for one kind of animals might be inappropriate or even deadly for another. Therefore, each of these animals has to keep their heart rate around a set point according to their adaptation to the environment they live in. Over 100 years before Walter Cannon introduced the term homeostasis, Charles Blagden, then Secretary of Royal Society of London, proved that he was one of the most persuasive people on earth. He managed to talk two friends into joining him in a small room in which the temperature had been raised to 260 Fahrenheit, which is 126 Celsius. They were, of course, aware that water boils at 100 Celsius, and so they were a bit reluctant. But Blagden prevailed, and the man taking along a dog, a steak, and eggs entered the room. They emerged 45 minutes later and were surprised to find that they were not only alive, but in a good shape. The dog was fine too, but the steak and eggs were fully cooked. Thus, Blagden demonstrated the remarkable abilities of living organisms to adjust to severe environmental conditions by regulating their internal processes. Of course, the delicate process of life demands extremely constant and specific conditions, and thus marked regulatory abilities should be expected. But often these abilities are startling indeed. Homeostasis is one of the persuasive themes in biology. So let's take a closer look at the concept. In Blagden experiment, the dog probably sought to leave the room, a behavioral response. Then he probably gave up and lay there panting, producing physiological changes. On a different time scale, continued warm days would have caused the dog to shed his heavy fur. And that is because a stimulus produces a reaction that ultimately reduces the stimulus. And this is what kept this man and dog alive. Yes, it is a fact that a stimulus produces a reaction that ultimately reduces the stimulus. We call this negative feedback system. We call this negative because it reverses or negates the initial change. In other words, negative feedback is the mechanism of diminution or counteraction of an effect by the body of a living organism. Negative feedback control, as I said time and again, simply means that a stimulus produces a reaction that ultimately reduces the stimulus. For example, a baby cries when it is hungry. The crying baby gets reaction from its parents, who feeds it. The baby stops crying and is no longer hungry for a while. From the baby point of view, the stimulus was the hunger, and its response was crying, which ultimately made the hunger go away. From the parent point of view, the stimulus was the crying, and the response was feeding the baby, which made the crying go away. The classical non-biological example of negative feedback control is the thermostat in your household heating system. The furnace has a thermostat that is set to a specific temperature called the set point. When the room cools below the set point, the thermostat sends a message to turn on the furnace. When the room temperature rises above the set point, the thermostat stops sending the message and the furnace shuts down. Regulating human body temperature uses a similar system with far more precision. A structure in the brain called hypothalamus detects the blood temperature change as little as 0.01 Celsius. If the blood temperature gets low, the hypothalamus sends signals to muscles, causing them to contract and relax in rapid cycles. The result is shivering. Shivering is the method of heat production. It generates body heat. When shivering has significantly warmed body and blood, sensors in the brain detect the change and the shiver signal stops. Generally, the circulatory system itself can help maintain temperatures. For example, when the body cools at very low external temperatures, blood leaves the skin, causing it to pale. Vasoconstriction, a narrowing of blood vessels, can minimize skin circulation and redirect the flow into deeper regions. This is why some people experience freezing in their fingers, toes, and ears before the internal temperatures begin to fall. You see, the vital organs receive the priority in the ensuring battle for survival. The organs that are not that important are sacrificed. As you see, biological homeostatic systems have their limits too. Many different organisms can keep their internal temperatures fairly constant, but some can do this over a much wider range than others. An Alaskan husky, for instance, can survive outdoors in the Arctic night, and you cannot. The husky has invested more of its resources in insulation and cold-resisting metabolism. If you become overheated, the hypothalamus triggers heat-losing mechanisms. One of these is vasodilation, widening of blood vessels. When blood vessels of the skin dilate, warm blood flows closer to the body surface and loses heat to the surrounding air. If this is not enough to return to the normal temperature, sweating occurs. The evaporation of water from the skin has a powerful cooling effect. An American drowns nearly every day in bathtub, hot tub, or spa. The heat leads to dilation, wide opening of the blood vessels. Blood rushes to the surface of the body to cool the temperature. This leads to a drop of blood pressure, and not enough of it gets to the brain. A person faints and drowns. This is an example when body tries to save one from overheating, but as a result, sudden death occurs by drowning. Maintaining homeostasis often involves interaction between cells and body organs or systems. For example, certain cells in the body monitor level of glucose in the blood. When the glucose level is above normal limits, the endocrine organ called the pancreas secretes insulin. Insulin is a hormone that prompts glucose to move from the blood into cells, resulting in lower glucose level in the blood. Think of insulin as a doorman that opens the door to let sugar into the cell. Cell needs sugar for their energy. Another hormone secreted by pancreas called glucagon. It works in opposite way. When the glucose level in the blood is too low, the glucagon prompts the release of glucose stored in the liver. Here's another example of negative feedback. A rise of blood calcium level triggers the release of hormone called calcitonin. What calcitonin does, it lowers blood calcium level. Here is how level of calcium ions control in our bloodstream. A rise in blood calcium levels triggers the release of a hormone called calcitonin that lowers blood calcium level. Release of calcitonin leads to decrease in calcium level. Decrease in calcium level leads to decrease of calcitonin. Decrease of calcitonin leads to increase of calcium level. And increase of calcium level or calcium ions leads to increase of calcitonin, and so on. So I hope from these examples you understand how negative feedback works. Remember, what keeps us, humans, animals, plants, and bacteria alive is a negative feedback mechanisms. A stimulus produces a reaction that ultimately reduces the stimulus. But is there a mechanism that does opposite? That is to say, when a stimulus produces reaction that ultimately increases the stimulus as shown in this graph. Yes, indeed, there is such mechanism. And such mechanism might kill you. The name of the mechanism is positive feedback. Positive feedback involves a physiological system that reinforces the change, works to reinforce or intensify the change. In other words, positive feedback is amplifying or magnifying the change or output. Okay, if it is not clear, here is an example. The baby may cry because, say, it is in pain from diaper rash, and it is not at all hungry. Remember, we had an example earlier when baby was hungry. Here it is not hungry. If the parent tries to feed it, it cries harder. So the parent tries harder to feed it. So it is positive feedback, where the stimulus evokes a response that further increases the stimulus instead of decreasing it. Thus, whereas negative feedback systems are stable, positive feedback loops are inherently unstable. Positive feedback loops are uncommon in nature and are usually associated with illness. Frequently, positive feedback is harmful or even life-threatening process. It is because its self-amplifying nature can quickly change the internal state of the body to something far from its homeostatic set point. Consider the fever, for example. A fever triggered by infection is beneficial up to a point. But if the body temperature rises much above 104 Fahrenheit, it may create a dangerous positive feedback loop. This high temperature raises the metabolic rate, which makes the body produce heat faster than it can get rid of. Thus, temperature rises still further, increasing the metabolic rate and heat production still more. This vicious cycle becomes fatal at approximately 113 Fahrenheit or 45 Celsius. Thus, positive feedback loop often creates dangerously out of control situations that require emergency medical treatment. Another good example is a high blood pressure. It can damage arteries and damage vessel walls, can become infused with lipid material, scar tissue, and cellular growth. Thus, the size of the vessel opening is restricted, further increasing blood pressure and arterial disease. And then we all know of people who are depressed because they are overweight. And so they eat because they are depressed. So this is how positive feedback mechanisms work. The stimulus evokes a response that further increases the stimulus instead of decreasing it. And this is how we can graph this. You see constantly increasing value outside of the normal range, and you see constantly decreasing value outside of the normal range. This is a positive feedback mechanism. Positive feedback is often a normal way of producing rapid change, such as blood clotting, protein digestion, or generation of nerve signals. When a woman is giving birth, for example, the head of the fetus pushes against her cervix, the neck of the uterus, and stimulates its nerve endings. Nerve signals travel to the brain, which in turn stimulates the pituitary gland to secrete hormone oxytocin. Oxytocin travels in the blood and stimulates the uterus to contract. This pushes the fetus downward, stimulating the cervix still more and causing the positive feedback loop to be repeated. Labor contractions therefore become more and more intense until the fetus is expelled. Conversely, in negative feedback, the output is decreased or inhibited. You know how important balance is when you watch gymnasts perform. A slight move in the wrong direction could spell disaster in a much practice routine. In many ways, organisms must maintain a delicate internal balance in order to survive. A biochemical move in the wrong direction could mean death.